for law enforcement against prohibition, and for me personally, so I'm really grateful for that. You know, there's a petition out there right now. If you go to leap.cc/free speech, it'll redirect you to a petition in support of police officers being able to speak out about controversial issues while they're off duty, right? And if you want to sign that or something like that, that'd be fantastic. So, just last question, I guess, ma'am.
Hi, thank you. I came here from the mainland, and a couple months ago there's an article in the paper, and I don't know if there's any stealth leapers in the Nanaimo PD, but Gary O'Brien, the spokesman, a couple months ago was going, oh yeah, it all starts with marijuana consumption, about being homeless and, you know, whatever. And like, he keeps all the time, he's always slamming cannabis. And I'm really offended. Why? I was infected with Hep C from the federal government. I'm still waiting for my settlement, and I'm getting really angry about this. I'm waiting for money so I can be an activist. It's happening. Another month, maybe 2, I don't know. But anyways, not only won't police not discuss it with you, it's even worse with the doctors. They won't talk about cannabis, they know it all. It's baloney, and I'm pissed off, and I'm waiting for the money. So I'm going to go see Larry Campbell and Libby Davies, and I'm going to get on board with the LEAP. And like, yeah, it's time to be an activist now, not next week, not next year, right now, because this is crazy.
Well, you said it. Okay, I think that's pretty much it in terms of.
Well, can we take 2 more questions?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. If you have time, I'm not sure.
That's not very big, you are.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Officer Bratzer, do you take advantage of the medicinal properties of cannabis yourself?
No, I
just don't inhale.
No, it's a good question. Because, for example, if I did have some kind of medical condition, then in Canada, legally, I could obtain an exemption, even as a police officer, right? And then perhaps, you know, I could use medicinal cannabis in Canada, but I don't have any kinds of medical problems in that regard.
And you're one of our best allies. If we don't use it, we see the problems are taken very seriously.
Yeah. Thanks, Joyce. Yeah, thank you. In the back, sir.
You know, a lot of what's being talked about in terms of what's really negative and what doctors don't like is the smoking of it. I want to know what your take is on, like, why there isn't any kind of regulation, even from Health Canada, and how you feel about, like, we can't even get a cookie. Like, if we turn it into a butter to make it into a cookie, right? Now we're breaking the law because we turned it into a butter. Well, you know, I mean, you know, like, they don't want to let us smoke it, they don't want us to let us eat it, they don't want to let us anything in that, you know, so it's kind of like the regulations don't allow for the converting of the plant into something probably more socially acceptable than smoking.
Yeah, it's impossible to find a doctor to sign your MRs.
I appreciate your frustration and Leap's position. It's interesting. Leap's position is that we support the full regulation and control of all drugs, period. And yet, while we're on this road to drug policy reform, we will also support any measure that is going to reduce crime, addiction, disease, or death. So that's sort of the context in which we support medicinal marijuana, for example, right? Because it is on that road to full drug policy reform. I agree, it does seem odd that the MMARs don't allow for the production of cookies, and I heard something about a cookie investigation recently. So, you know, I do appreciate the frustration, and hopefully that will change down the road. Mark?
Do you still, I mean, notwithstanding that you have disagreements with drug policy, would you still recommend the careers of police officers to any of the people here? Are you enjoying that role as a job?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I'm glad that you asked that, because policing is a vital profession, right? It really is. And right now in our society, it's a profession that is under scrutiny. right? For many reasons, and perhaps rightfully so. But for me, for example, it's all that I've ever known to sort of grow up in this area where police officers' actions are carefully scrutinized by the media, right? Where there's video cameras everywhere. So that's all that I've ever known, I guess, as a police officer. So that's the context that I know this profession. But law enforcement does a lot of good work, drug prohibition accepted. You know, everything from responding to public emergencies, you know, earthquakes, domestic violence, you know, all kinds of crime where an actual person or someone's property is being damaged. We investigate that. You know, law enforcement has a critical role in maintaining public order, you know, so at large festivals and things like that, for example. And I've had a ball, like, as a police officer. I love the job. I'd recommend it to everybody, although I know it's not for everyone.
So a person
Arresting somebody.
who's not accepting a prohibition would still be welcome as a police officer at the application process or the training process? Or would that come up? Yeah, I was just wondering, because I was wondering if our people should join police.
Yeah, I want to be a police officer.
That's interesting, actually, because it didn't come up in my interview.
Yeah, but one look at you.
Are you right?
So, but it's interesting because I think if the question had come up at that time, 5 years ago, I probably would have said something like, you know what? At that time, I probably would have said, you know, I'm open to the possibility of legalizing marijuana. I think people should go to jail for life, marijuana, or used other drugs. And in fact, you could not, like police departments across Canada and the United States, you couldn't staff those departments if you got rid of every single officer that had tried marijuana in grade 12, right? So, yes, sir?
Yeah, kind of related to what Mick was saying there earlier. It seems pretty clear to me like that the police are the #1 lobby group against marijuana. You know what I mean? On the news, there's always spoken people, and they're commenting like on medical aspects and all sorts of aspects apparently qualified to speak for. And so is that, do you think, having more to do with job protection or some sort of moral kind of belief that marijuana is bad? Because when I talk to cops one-on-one, they say, well, we never get called to a house for domestic violence over pot, it's all alcohol related. And I think that would be the view of most cops, that they're not having problems with marijuana people except for maybe busting grow-ups and whatnot. So is it, how much of it's job protection and how much it is like stuck in an old arcane belief system that somehow marijuana is the downfall of society?
Well, I think your question or your suggestion relates to my earlier comments where often law enforcement and authority figures are at the tail end of movements for social change, right? Certainly in terms of you know, the civil rights movements of the 60s and things like that. My personal opinion is that the two major obstacles to drug policy reform are the United States government and their position on drug prohibition, and the second major problem would be law enforcement interest groups and lobby groups. So I agree with you.
Can I help you out on that one?
Yes.
Is it cowardice of politicians to defend their own policy? Not a single politician at the municipal, provincial, or federal level ever goes on TV to actually defend why we have prohibition. You never see it ever. They don't do it, so cops by default end up being the only spokesman ever that do it because they have a public relations person who's assigned to take that if you do that.
Dave,
Yes.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the DARE program. Does law enforcement against prohibition have an opinion about it, and do you guys offer any sort of alternative drug education for kids?
So the question is the DARE program, does law enforcement against prohibition support it? It's a good question. I don't know if we have an official position on it. I don't think you'll find any lead speakers that do think that uniformed police officers should be going into schools to talk to kids about drug policy, right? And make the comparison, for example, to sex education, right? You would not send a uniformed cop into a grade 5 classroom to tell kids that if they had sex when they were underage, they're going to wind up as prostitutes, right?